everyone, this is Gayle and I'm back with part 3 of making our polymer clay fairy house. And as you can see, I've still got 3 different colors of clay here. I always have more than one color, if you probably know that. And in addition to that, I also have some of the gray scrap clay that I have put together, so I'll have that to fall back on if I need to use it. But so far, the only clay I've used on this votive, and this is the one we're working on right here, the only clay I have used so far has all been scrap clay. So I'm going to try to keep that and keep that going and try to make this totally out of scrap clay, because it will help get rid of some of my scrap. And we're going to antique it, so some of the places it doesn't really matter anyway. But let's just start having some fun. Now I'm going to leave the top for last, because even though that's the cutest, I think, this is the one that I'm using as my inspiration. This is one I did a while back, a couple years ago, and I really, really, really like these. So I thought we would start. See, here I've got a vine that goes over the door. So let's start with something like that. Now you can extrude this if you have an extruder. You can extrude your little snakes. But I'm going to go under the assumption that not everybody has one. So, just cut little strips of clay that are just about as wide as they are thick, and start rolling little snakes. And it would help if I used a longer blade, wouldn't it? But just start cutting some little strips, and we're going to roll these into snakes. Or if you have a little ball of clay and you want to start rolling that into a snake, that's fine. But I just find it so easy to do when you cut it into little strips. I think that's enough for right now. Let me just move this aside. Probably ought to move all of this aside, so I don't think I'll need my pasta machine, but anyway. So you can see I've got all these little strips, and I'm just going to take them one at a time and roll them into little round snakes. And this is going to be the stem of our vine. So there's one, and let's see, I think I will have it come up over this way. So I will just start it somewhere down here at the bottom. Now just remember that you will be covering up some of this at the bottom when you put your grass on. But this does not have to be straight. Who has ever seen a straight vine? If they're like any of the vines that come into my yard, they kind of go everywhere. So that right there is fine. And if you want to put some swirls, you can do that. Let me find a shorter one, although these are all pretty much the same length. I'll just do this one and pinch off a piece. You can make secondary, like this is only like one vine, but you can have little branches that come off. And let me show you what I like to do when I do that. I make one end really slim. The rest of it try to make close to the same size. And just say I want to come around this star. I would just stick that there. And I might even make a little swirl. Let me do that first. It might be easier to make a little swirl on the end. And then bring it over and let it meet your stem. So now you've got a branched off vine, which is usually how vines go. So let me just do one more little one. Or if you want to just leave the one vine the way we did originally, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just showing you some options. Because remember, this is your project. And I think I'm even going to leave that sticking up a little bit. Just because that's kind of what vines do. Okay, so we have a vine. So now we need to add some leaves. And I'm going to stick with my green. And I know it kind of sounds funny that I'm using only like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 4 or 5 colors. But we're going to antique it, and then we're going to use mica powders. So you can do a lot of things with the same color and then change it after it's been done. So let's start with some leaves. And what I like to do, and I might make this a little bit thinner. Let me just cut a piece of this off. I think this is probably a number 3. I'm going to roll this down to a number 5 on the pasta machine. Because you don't want your leaves to be real thick. And what I'm going to use is a Kemper cutter. You know, I told you I love my Kemper cutters. And this one is the teardrop. And I'm just going to cut several. Now, if you don't want to make your leaves separate, you can roll your clay into a little teardrop. Now, these will be a little bit big. I wonder if I have a smaller teardrop. These are my Kemper cutters. I have so many different sets. There's a smaller one. So I'll do 2 different sizes of Kemper cutters. And I'm also going to use this. I've got so many cutters. I've got things. You just can't imagine what I've got in these drawers. But I'm going to punch out a bunch of leaves in both sizes. And I may have to do even more as I get started, because you don't know how many you're going to use until you start using them. But I'll have enough to get started, and then I'll go from there. Now I'll switch over to the smaller teardrop. Because, you know, on your, if you, I don't know what part of the country, or even if you're in this country, I don't know where you're watching this from, but fairies in my part of the country have different size leaves on their vines. I like the Kemper cutters because they have the little plunger on there. And one day, I'm going to make the thing, like if I wanted, what I wanted to do, let me see if I can get one that'll stick inside. I could take this, and I've got the clay cut in there, and I can bake it in the oven, and then pop it out after it's baked, and then glue it on this little plunger tip that's inside. And then I would have a flat piece that would push out the leaves when I cut them, instead of having to push it with the plunger. So that's always another thing. But these are all metal, so they can go in the oven. And I think this is going to be enough for now. And I'll come back and cut more as I need them. So, I'm going to start with the smallest leaves. And again, try to be careful how you hold yours. I try to keep my hand inside if I can, so that I don't mash any of my design, but it doesn't always work. But you can do a couple of things. You can take your needle tool and press a little vein in the center, and in some little side veins. like I'm doing here. You don't want to go all the way through because you don't want to break your leaf, but this way when you do your antiquing, let me put this down while I do that. But when you do your antiquing, you'll have these little lines where your dark paint will go in and it will really show. It won't show much now, but when you antique it in the end, it's going to be really nice. Now, for those of you that are just beginning to watch, I did another tutorial. This is part 3. I did part 1, which was covering my votive. So be sure you watch that. It kind of tells you how to get started making a fairy house. And then part 2, I believe, is when I made the windows and the doors. I'm sorry, these bigger ones are easier to do than the little ones, but they're also sticking more. But anyway, I showed you how to do, how to cover the votive, and then how to make the windows and doors. And this is part 3, where we're actually going to start decorating. This to me is the fun part, and it can be time consuming because, like you see, I'm going through and I'm putting lines and veins in all of my leaves, and that does take some time, but it is so worth it in the end. Let me show you this one. Hopefully you can see. Can you see those leaves? How it picked up the paint when I antiqued it in all those little veins. See? So it does come in handy to do that. And unfortunately, it does take time to put your veins in all of them, and they're not all going to be pretty. And I wouldn't worry about it because they're going to be covered up with flowers. Most of them will be. But all you want is just something to make it look like a real leaf. And that's the easiest thing that I know to do, is just to put a few veins in it. And I still haven't done all the little ones. Those are much harder. I kind of cheated a little bit and did the big ones because they were easier. But if you want to fast forward through this, I completely understand. I won't cut it out. Sometimes I cut these things out. But I have found that there are people that like to see the entire process. So if you don't want to see the entire process, please feel free to fast forward until we get to where we're actually putting these leaves on. What's that saying? You can please some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. Something like that. But anyway, please, I don't mean fool. But I try to keep my tutorials friendly to everyone, whether you're an absolute beginner and have no idea how to do this, and the people that are more experienced might want to fast forward. But let's work with what we've got. And I'm going to start here at I'll start at the top. And I'm going to use my blade because putting the veins in them, everything is kind of mashed down onto my work surface. And if you want to do a little pinch so that they're not flat, just pinch them a little bit. and just start putting them on. And I'm going to put the smaller leaves near the end. And I'm going to put them in pairs, because then I'll put a flower with the pairs. And then if I have any extra leaves, I will just put them on individually. Let's see. And again, this can be time consuming also, putting all these little leaves on here. Now I'll stop in just a second and show you what I've done so far, because I know you can't see, but there's some leaves. And I haven't pushed them all totally down. I'm letting them have some dimension. As long as they're stuck to the clay, I'm okay. Now I'll probably start putting some of the larger leaves, and these are easier to pinch. I'll pinch them at the top and at the bottom, just a little bit, and then press them on. Of course, that one's going to get covered up by the flower, so I'll put this on the bottom. I'm going to use the same flower as a roof that I did on my other one, just because I absolutely love it. It's a Martha Stewart flower, and I'll show everything to you when we get to that point. And for those of you that want to order ahead of time, I have put some of these molds on my Amazon page. If you want to go ahead and order them ahead of time and have them ready. Now, I use the Martha Stewart molds. Someone had asked me to put some other molds on my page, which I did. But as I'm working, I'm going to be putting the products that I use on my Amazon page. So if you ever want to, if you want to get all your things at one time and only pay postage one time, you can go to my Amazon page and get everything you need right there. How simple. Helps you and it helps me. So let me see. Let me put a flower, or a leaf rather. And I may not show all of this. So let me just stop here and show you what I've done so far. You can put as many leaves as you want. And now I'm going to start with the flowers. And I'm going to use some yellow. This again is scrap, so it's not really a yellow. It's more like a yellow-green, because there's other colors that got mixed in with it. But I'm going to use, again, my Kemper cutters. And these are little flowers, and I'm going to use 2 different sizes. And I'm going to just, my phone's ringing. And I probably need to run this through the pasta machine at a number 5, because this is just too thick. Okay, somebody's trying to reach me. I've got a sick dog at the vet, and somebody just called my cell phone and my home phone, so I need to take a quick break and go see what's going on. I apologize for that. My daughter's dog has been very sick, and we took her to the vet, and she is there today. And when I heard my cell phone ring, and not my cell phone, I heard my landline ring, and I just let it ring, because most of the time it's just a robocall anyway. And right after that stopped, then I heard my cell phone ring, and I went, oh dear, somebody's trying to reach me. Excuse me. But they just wanted to keep her until this afternoon. I was going to go pick her up just before lunch, and they said they'd rather wait until after lunch because they want to do some things with her. So that's what that was. So I apologize for the interruption. But I'm just going to cut, and again, I think I showed you, I have 2 sizes of the flower molds. Actually, I've got more than that, or not molds, these are cutters. And I'm going to cut different sizes because, again, I think the flowers on the tips would probably be a little bit smaller than the flowers down at the base. At least that's the way I think about it. So I'll get some small flowers. Then I'll cut some little bit larger flowers. They're not hugely larger, but it's the next size up. But I also have these Kemper cutters on my Amazon page because I absolutely love them. I think I've got the flowers, the hearts, the teardrops, the circles, the squares, and I've got them in all different sizes, all the way up to 1 inch. And sometimes you have to buy a separate set to get the 1-inch size. And sometimes you have to get a separate set to get the teeny weeny little ones. But I did that too. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just take my ball tool and I'm going to use the one with the largest ball, which I think is this one. I'm going to pick up my votive and put it over where the leaves are. And I'm just going to let me pick up some small ones. And I'll go put it where I want it. And then just kind of press in the center with the ball tool. And it leaves this little indentation, and it makes the flower look more like a flower than just a flat. Those two got stuck together. But just, again, you just lift it up, put it on, and you just press a little bit with the ball tool, and it brings the petals up, presses the other so that it does attach to the clay. And you've got some cute little flowers. Let me separate these while I've got my hand free, if I can do it with one hand. And you just place your flowers wherever you want them. I'm going to place one there. And they don't have to be with the leaf, even though right there is probably going to be overlapped. I'm still going to put something there. I'm going to pick up a larger flower and put it there. But just fill in with your flowers and your leaves wherever you want them. Whoops, I missed that, so I'm just going to, I might pull that one off. I kind of pushed that in the wrong place. I wasn't in the center and I wasn't paying attention. There. But I am going to continue doing this, and I won't make you watch because I'm just going to come down the rest of this way here. But I will be back when I've done that, and we'll go to the next step. Okay, before we go any further, I wanted to show you what I did here, and I don't know that I'm going to have room to do this on the smaller votive. But see where I did some texture here to make it look like grass, and I put it down the bottom here, and I might just be able to do just a little thin rim because I also did stones here to make it look like a walkway. And on this smaller votive, if I do anything, I'll only be able to put like a small little rim around the bottom, so it's not going to be exactly, because of course the other one is larger and I just have more room on the other one. But I think I'll do that before I do anything else. And I'm going to go back to my green, my dark green, and I'm just going to cut some strips. They don't really have to be straight, but I'm only going to cut them about that wide, maybe 1/4 of an inch wide. I don't know how many I'll need, so I'll just cut plenty. And I hope I did get that texture sheet out because I got it out to use. Yeah. Remember, I used one similar to this for the wood, and this one is grass. Kind of a grassy look. So I'm just going to lay this on here. And again, use the end of my roller. And don't press so hard that you flatten the clay out, but press hard enough that you get the texture into your clay. Because again, when you do the antiquing, that's when this is going to show up. That looks good enough. So I'm going to turn this upside down because right now there's nothing on the top. That's another reason you kind of save the top for last, because it really helps sometimes to put this upside down. But let me show you here. See how this being antiqued, how the paint got into all the little crevices and made it look like grass. So again, you won't see a big difference right now, but you will notice it later. So I'm just going to put this around the bottom. I'm going to come up right to that rock. Can you see it? I came up to the rock here that goes around the door. So I'm just going to cut that. Because you know these fairies keep their fairy houses, their lawns, very well trimmed. Just make sure it goes all the way up to the edge. And I think I need to recut these lines because that one didn't pull very well. Let's see if I can see them. I can see that side. Let me just make a guess that that's where it is. But this end broke. And it doesn't really matter if the top side is a little ragged, because if your yard looks like mine, the grass is always ragged looking. And just gently press it up to the edge. We only need a little piece there, and I cut a whole lot more than I needed. But I'd rather have too much than not enough. I'm just going to meet this up against there, and again go to the rock and just trim that off. So now we have a little bit of grass, not as much as on the other one, but we'll have some grass. And I probably, while I'm here, ought to do some stones to go across the bottom. You know how I love making these stones. Not everything is fun, but again, make them different sizes. Probably should make them as small as I can because I don't want to take up a lot of space. But just to give you the illusion of having a walkway that comes out from the door. You know, most people have a sidewalk or a step or something that comes outside their door. So let's just put some little stones there that will look like it's a step down or something. I think I'll use these smaller ones rather than those large ones. I might just break these in half. Since we don't have a lot of room, and then we'll just lay those along the bottom of the door. One stuck to my finger, so I'll start with that one. And just come all the way down to where, even if you slightly overlap the bottom, because you can trim that off. But we want to make sure that it looks like there's some kind of walkway that comes out from this door. And I'm not staggering these, mainly because I don't have the room, but also to make it a little bit different from the rocks. Let's see, I'll cut that one in half because it's just a little space. And then I'll just trim across the bottom. But there, does that give the illusion that there's a little walkway coming out from the door, or a step? I hope it does. And I don't think I'm going to put the little dots in those because I want them to look different. So okay, we've got a vine. Let's put some flowers. So again, I thought I had one already rolled. But roll these little strips that you cut earlier, or if you didn't have any left over, cut a few more, because we need stems for our flowers. So let's see, where will we put a flower? Let's put one right here next to the door. So I'm just going to bring two little flower stems down here. And I think I will put some leaves on that. But these leaves are going to be not the right shape because I want a different kind of shape. So I'm going to just use some of this with the texture in it. And I'm just going to cut a long leaf shape. Make a curve on that side, and a curve on this side. And let me see if I can do the same thing again. Hopefully I can. Just cut little shapes. Like I said, it's a fairy house. It doesn't have to be exact. These are little creatures that hide in the woods, and you don't even see them. And their houses have to be discreet so that people don't see them. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it on this side of this stem. I'm going to take this one and go on the other side of this stem. Maybe pull that stem over a little bit. And you can use your dotting tool, your ball tool, to just maneuver things where you want it. And then be sure you press it down. I'm going to use, I think, smaller flowers right here. Again, I have these cutters. And with these, I'm going to go ahead and place them where I want them. And then use the little plunger, because the plunger kind of defines the middle. So there's 2 little pink flowers. You see, I'm mashing my thumbs into this when I work sometimes. I just keep forgetting to put my hands inside. I'll just put a flower there. But I think I want to use this fern first. I like to put the larger things in first, and I really like this fern. And I am going to use, let's see, should I use cornstarch? And where is it? Don't you just hate when you try to clean something up and then you can't find anything? It's usually right here. So I guess I'll use water. When all else fails, use water. But I'm just going to spritz this a little bit. I'm going to take the green and I'm going to press it in. Now, this is a Martha Stewart mold. And I bought it only for this fern leaf. And Sarah Haynes, that is My Serenity Crafts, she's the one that showed me this mold. I believe she used it on a fairy house, and I loved it. Only problem with using this with water is it's not going to stick, so I can't shave it. But that's okay. I will just cut it out. Any of you that do paper crafting know about fussy cutting. So this is a little bit easier because you don't have to maneuver scissors. So just carefully cut. And I think I will fast forward through this just so you don't have to watch me cut. Let me show you the design before I do that though. Can you see that fern? Isn't that pretty? But I'm going to go ahead and go fast forward and I'll be back when I finish. Okay, I finished cutting this out, and I'm just going to tidy up some of the little leaves. Oh, I did want to cut these. I didn't cut these out because they would be so tiny, so I figured I would just cut little slits. Let me be careful. I'll put this over one of my thumbprints, but you just lay it on there and gently press it on, and what was a fern now turns into like a little evergreen tree. But who knows, a fern to a fairy might be a tree. So we need some flowers here, and this is where I will use, let me use this color this time. I'm going to put my little stems coming out of the ground. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to do one of these tall ones. And I don't like my stems to be straight. I like them to curve. And I'm going to use this mold. And I think I will use some of the gray in here so that I can color it a different color. But just make a ball. And I think I'm going to use, well, I used that one on the other one, but I think I'll use the small one. And it's got some cornstarch in there. And if I could just find my cornstarch. It's in a little Tupperware container. And I just, oh, I bet it's over here. It is. It's not really a Tupperware container. See, I organize and then I don't remember where I organize. This is just a little, it's made by Wilton, and it's got a little bag inside, and you screw this top off and fill it with cornstarch. Then you can just kind of dab it like this and put it back in here, and you don't have to make a lot of mess. Should have known I put it somewhere logical. But anyway, so I've rolled up some gray clay, and you don't need a big piece. This one is maybe the size of a garbanzo bean, and it may be too much, but press it in. Slice across the top, and you'll see these, because they're deeper molds, they're much easier to do. Then you just loosen the sides and pull it out, and there's a pretty little flower. And I'm going to color that maybe purple. And it's still got some cornstarch in there, so I'll just roll another little ball. I'm going to put 3, just because I like odd numbers. Loosen the edges, and then it'll come right out. So there's 2, and I don't know if this is enough clay to fill it or not. It really isn't, but it's just about the right size to just pop out. So there, I've got 3 flowers that I can color later. And this Martha Stewart mold has got 3. And I can't tell you the sets because I've taken them all apart. They're all together, but a lot of her flowers come in 3 sizes, you know, like this. There's this little petal flower, and I planned on using that. I just don't know if I'm going to have room. But I really like that. Here's 2 of her butterfly molds. And I got this one out because I like this little sideways butterfly. And then I also like this one that's got the little flat butterfly. So I'll be using several Martha Stewart molds. And so anyway, I put my vine on, or my long stem, and I'm going to put one here at the end. Just make sure it sticks to your clay without messing up your texture. And then I will, let's see, somewhere I molded a leaf. I wonder if I used one of these molds for a leaf. I do have this. I like that leaf, but I don't want it that deep. So I wonder if I can just press some clay down in there and then pull it out like I did the flower. Just press it in, loosen the edges, and pull it out. And it's got a nice texture to it. And I'll put one here. Actually, I'll put it on this side because it came out a little lopsided and it looks better there. It's a little thicker than I would have liked. So let me try a smaller piece of clay and make another leaf. Maybe a little bit shallower. Yeah, this is gonna, I don't know if you can tell or not, but it's not all the way down in the mold, which will make it not quite as thick. See, this is much better. Whoops, don't drop it, Gayle. And I'll put that one over here. So there, I've got this one that I'm going to make purple. And I've got this one, or maybe I'll make that one purple. Maybe I'll make these a different color. And I've still got a little bit of room. I've got something that can go down here. So let's do some small flowers. I didn't use these, did I? Let me cut two of these. Well, let me put my stems on first. So you can just play. You can do anything you want. I'm just looking to see where I've got spaces. Okay. So I'm going to do another stem. And again, I need to cut them fairly short. I'm going to cut several in case I need a different size. See if I can put my hands in here like they should be. I'll put a stem here, and I'll bring it towards the center. And I'll want a shorter one over here and bring it towards the center. And here's my thin. I'll just use this yellow. Let me come back out so you can see what I'm doing. See, there's my stems. I'm going to use this little flower petal, and it didn't stick in my cutter like I hoped it would. And then take this and put it right there, and you again use the plunger. Except I didn't get the indent, but that's okay. It put it where it needed to be. Looks like a daisy. And I'll cut another one to be on this stem. And what I'll do here is take the skinny side of my ball tool and just put some little dots. Okay, so that'll look real pretty when it's antiqued. Now, what else can we do? Let's add a butterfly. And I will use pink for this because I'm going to be adding blue to that. Or actually, I think I'll use this, and then the blue on top of this will be really pretty. And I'm going to just put some of that, oh, I thought that was a hole. It's just some dirty clay over the opening. And then press other clay into it. And that way you don't have to take the time to make a ball. And you can roll your extra clay into the mold if you want, rather than getting some other clay, because you do want it to be flush with the top of the mold. Cut the extra clay off and then shave off your butterfly. And if you want to do it in stages, you can do that, although that came off all at one time. Excuse me. Pull out your butterfly and see that these molds have really nice little detail in it, and the antiquing really picks that up. So let's put this butterfly up here. Yeah, put it up there. Now I want to use the sideways butterfly, and I'll do the same thing. I'll just put a solid piece of clay over the opening. The reason I do that is because if you push in a bunch of clay that has seams in it for where you balled it up and everything, then those seams will sometimes show when you're doing your thing. When and you like this. If I put this in here like this with these seams, then these seams would show on the bottom part of the butterfly, and you don't want that. So I put my ugly clay on top of a smooth sheet. And then slice. And there's a little bitty piece of the antenna that didn't get done. Not that I think I'm going to be able to use it anyway, but you never know. Sometimes those little bitty, teeny tiny little pieces can fool you. Just shave until you're sure all of the extra clay is out of off the top. Can you see those little itty bitty antennas? We'll see if they stay. But before I pull it out, I'm going to put it where it looks like it's on a flower, which would probably be like right there on this big flower, which means this needs to go somewhere else. Whoops, don't break it. Let me put this one here by the door. And then I'll put this little one over here by this flower. So that being sideways, it's going to look like it's sucking the nectar out of the flower. And it might overlap that window a bit, but that's okay. And the antenna did work. It got a little bent. But there. And you just keep adding. What else do we want to put on here? I'm just looking here. This is a mold that I've got, and I bought it for the fairy door and the shutters. But this mold is so soft and squishy that I'm really having a hard time getting anything out of it. I'm not even sure what this is. I think these are flowers to go in the flower box, and they go up underneath the edges too much, and I really struggled getting the clay out of it. But they've got these little mushrooms, and I would really like to try to do the mushrooms, and I'll do those in gray so that I can color them whatever color I want. Because, you know, fairy houses have mushrooms around them, right? And I think I'm going to go with the larger one, only because, but see how this, the edges overlap, so it's really difficult to get your clay in there. And I'm going to try doing the top part separate. I'm not even sure where I bought this mold, but I bought it when I was first thinking about doing a fairy house, and was so disappointed that I couldn't use it because the clay doesn't come out easily. It's like the top hasn't been shaved enough, and maybe one day when I get a little bit braver, and I really don't care if I ruin the mold, I will try shaving some of that top off, like some of it's coming off with the clay anyway, to see if I can make it a little bit easier to use. But I did struggle with this. So let's see how this works. Just pull the sides back and hopefully it will pop out. There you go. So I will put a mushroom maybe right here. And see, and this has some yellow clay in there. I don't know where, it must have been on my gray. But it's got all kinds of detail on the mushroom, and all that will be picked up when you do the antiquing. I'm just making sure it meets the grass. So we have a mushroom, we have butterflies. Let me look at this other one and see what else I've done. I see a dragonfly, and I don't have a dragonfly mold, so I'm not sure where that is. Oh, I did have these things that look like bushes. Let me see if I do. I have this mold, this cane that I made, I don't know how long ago. But when I was doing my other fairy house, I thought it looked like a bush. So I think I will try it. Whoops. Try to cut straight again because I'm not directly over it. Let me get over it, and just excuse my hair, but I can see better how to cut it this way. There. And doesn't it look like a little bush? I think I'll put that right here under this window. And I might put another one right here. Let's make it a little bit smaller. Well, I'll cut it first. Again, excuse me. It's just so much easier to cut a cane if you're directly over it. But I'm going to pull a couple of these little pieces off just to make it a little bit smaller. And put that one under this window. Now they don't look the same, but yet there's a bush under each window. And we still need something up here. My door is here on this side. So on this side, opposite, I would really like to put something. In the other one, I did that little cherub. But I don't know that I've still got that cherub. I don't think I do. Let me think. What could I put there? I'm not going to waste your time trying to figure that out. I'm